All right, hey everybody, TG Watkins here. Let's see, it is April 12th, Saturday when I'm recording this. Hope you guys are enjoying your weekend. It is a lovely day out here up in the Pacific Northwest, so I'm going to be getting through this and then heading outside to enjoy the weather now that things are starting to warm up. But wanted to show you guys this. So this is going to be the class list that we go through and what we're talking about today. We've got some news items to discuss. And before we jump into that, I'll show you the S&P, but wanted to show you these are some posts that I'm going to be putting out here because we started getting into. So the Moxie Room, we just finished two of the three classes, so we still have them for sale if you guys are interested in coming in. But in the Moxie Room, we started buying the market and we started buying FNGA, and then I was about to buy Tesla. And then the news came out with Trump pausing tariffs and everything else like that, and that is what got the market going. But we could see from a technical area, before the news came out, we actually started buying this market. And boy, we actually had to take off later that day, but the market then jumped up 10% one day. So yeah, lots to talk about here, and I'll show you guys how this works and what we did there. And then just remember, if you guys are interested, come over to simplertrading.com/Moxie-method, so Moxie method, because we've now done the OG, the original Moxie indicator class. We've done the 0DT SPX class for if you guys want to do day trading options. And then the next class we have, if you look here, it's going to be on Wednesday the 16th. So this Wednesday, we're going to do the third and final class of this sector, and we're going to be doing it about ETFs and leverage ETFs. And if you guys can see, one of the trades that I took was on TSLL, so the leverage ETF of Tesla, and there are specific reasons that things like TSLL show us that Tesla does not show us. And this is the same kind of stuff that we're talking about with FNGA, why I like to trade that versus say, NASDAQ or some of the other things that we see when I use these leveraged ETFs. There are actually some clues and some different things that they show that other areas don't show. And so that's going to be the class on the 16th. If you guys are interested, remember it's simplertrading.com/Moxie method. Okay, we'll have all that information in the description too if you guys are interested. But yeah, so you can see here, this was so on the 9th. So the day that, I think it was Wednesday, the day that the Trump tariff pause news came out. This is 7:23 Pacific. So the news I think came out a couple hours later, and we started putting in some buys. So we did actually a put credit spread on the S&P. We did it in the money. So we were looking at that 5,200 because I figured it's a good risk to reward, and I figured the market's gonna be moving up, and we got it for about $10.50. And so yeah, that's great. And really, by the end of the day, I think we're up 50%, maybe even close to 60%. And right now we're at a little over plus 50%. And I'm going to give it a few more days, and this thing should hopefully close. I'm going to be looking for 70, maybe we can get 80% gain on that put credit spread. And that was a big one. So that's really, really nice in through here. If you guys want to look at my X page, you can see we've just got these things posted. All right, so as far as the other news, we got the tariff pause. This did happen at technical levels. It's kind of crazy. I always say it's very interesting to see that the charts, the technicals, and news always kind of line up with each other. Like the charts kind of get ready for something, and then news comes out, and it's like, oh, it's just waiting for that. And so that's what we saw here is the market has now corrected 20%. And lo and behold, where did the market bounce from? 20%. Where did the news come from? 20%. And this whole, yeah, guys, again, let's not be political here, conspiracy theory or not, whatever you want to say. But we know that the tariff news, the 90-day pause on tariffs was leaked, or at least was kind of discussed. What's this, Monday? And that's where we got that big move. But then the White House kind of had to walk that back. And then that same news came out on Wednesday. And so I'm kind of looking at this thinking, well, apparently that was news. That was real. They were planning on having a 90-day pause, and it looks like it got leaked because they had to walk it back, and then finally we had the real thing. Okay, so very interesting to see what's going on with that. And then I think the news today or even yesterday were that semis and some tech products and other things like that are exempted from the China tariffs. Because remember, I think we're up to 145% tariffs on China. So there are some exemptions. I'm sure this will help things like Apple, semiconductors in general, SMH, as far as the ETFs, SMCI, NVIDIA, names like that, Intel, so Dell, that should kind of help stuff like that. And you can trade the ETFs if you want to do that. And then the other thing that I'm going to be looking at, we'll talk about bonds down. And I heard I'll have to find the exact article, but some of the things that people were saying is that as a retaliation effort, that China was basically flooding the market with bonds, and so that lowered the price of bonds and raised interest rates. And we're trying to think if that was what they're trying to do. They're trying to retaliate. They're trying to the fact that the bonds did what they did. Maybe that was the reason that Trump kind of cried uncle and had to change things. So I don't know. There's a whole lot of news out there. There's a lot of different thoughts and theories about this stuff. I'm just presenting this to you because this is some of the stuff that I know that people are discussing out there. But really, what I want to discuss is because the bonds went down, I think that's the reason why the RKT trade didn't work. So we got stopped out of that one. I mentioned it last week in the video. I was going to be buying RKT and FNGA. Well, one of the two worked out. So RKT did not. I think it's because it's related to TLT, since Rocket Mortgage is related to interest rates. But FNGA did work, and we did start buying that, and I have screenshots of that. And so, we're doing pretty well with that one. Okay, so let's kind of go through some of these names. If we look at the S&P, once again, we came down here and, let's see, 20% correction, right there. So 20%, and then that's basically where the news came out. From a technical area, we have been seeing that the S&P, the markets generally, were, really, really far down. They are outside of their outer boundaries on the weekly and the daily and even on the hourly. And we just, all sorts of records were broken about the market coming down in, 2 or 3 days and 4% back to back and all that stuff. So a lot of crazy stuff has been happening. And at some point, it's going to get a little bit too far, again, technical levels. And then it's just going to be looking for any kind of good news. We all knew that if anything came out tariff related that was less bad or good, the markets were just totally ready to go. And sure enough, the Trump news was exactly that. However, I will say that there were technical reasons that were telling us to start looking long. The daily chart was extremely oversold. We had a double bottom here on the hourly chart. This is one of those patterns I talk about, the elf shoe. And so this worked out beautifully. This is why when the market jumped up on Tuesday, I knew ultimately that price was going to come down. I didn't know which day it was going to be, but I put out a message to the Moxie traders and said, hey, we should be expecting price to come back down because of these Moxie patterns that I teach. And sure enough, it did. Then the tariff news on China came out that midnight and the market didn't go down. I was like, aha, I think that is one of the first clues that this market is done going down. So, they're like, oh, we're going to do more tariffs. And the market says, yeah, whatever. And so we actually started loading up here Wednesday morning, and then the news came out like this. And again, so the market jumped up 10%, but then it sold off on Thursday. And I had a lot of trader friends around me being like, well, I don't know, this isn't good. It shouldn't be selling off like this. That should be good news that the market went up and now it's, can't find any buyers. I was like, no. It's the same reason why after Tuesday, the market pulled back, but then went up. This is the same reason the market pulled back and then went up, okay? These were really big moves. The market has to work its way through some of these technical levels and these patterns and formations, which is exactly everything that I teach. And those of you who've been taking the Moxie class and know what I'm talking about, that's exactly what's happening. And so I want to make sure that you guys know this too. So come on over to the class and you can still purchase it. But this is what we're doing. This is why we're able to figure these things out and actually take these trades. But I even said Thursday morning, like right here, I said, hey, we should expect a pullback and do the Moxie patterns that I talk about. And sure enough, it held at the 15-minute 50 perfectly. It held at the hourly 21 perfectly. And so far, so good. Now, ultimately, I think we're going to be coming up to here. And I think even more so, we're going to be coming up to here. So I think there are two levels to the upside that I think we're going to go. The question is on Monday, Tuesday, do we just go straight up there? Or do we actually have a little bit of a pullback before we go up here? So I'm giving myself two paths as far as how the market could move up. But I definitely think the market could be moving up. We got some of these exemptions that we heard today. Trump turned, pausing on tariffs. The market's oversold 20%. The UVIX was super high. The VIX was super high. Breadth was super far down. Like all these things that gave us all the reasons to say, hey, I think this market's really bottomed out here. So that's what I'm thinking. If we look at the NASDAQ, it's basically the same thing. Same patterns, same formations, same all that kind of stuff. Double bottom here, oversold on the daily chart. We had our divergence on the 15. You can see, had our double bottom, had our positive divergence on the Moxie indicator, all that kind of stuff. So this is all working out exactly how we want it to go. The other thing was, I forget where we put it. Um, well, anyway, it's somewhere here, but I was saying that I think that the market should jump up to about the daily 21, which would be the S&P SPX 5400, and that's exactly where we went that Wednesday after the news came out. So something that I thought was gonna take a few days to happen. Well, news comes out, new information, boom, goes right to the spot that I thought we were gonna hit. All right, so we got that, and if we look at the IWM, the same kind of deal. I mean, just everything was so smashed and so oversold, and then if you look like this, and you look at where the IWM was, it didn't really have that much further to go down. I mean, talk about your previous all-time low. This was a huge area of support, and you can see here we are right at it. And so you look even at this when you're like, yeah, it's probably not going to go that much further. And we were just all waiting in the wings, waiting for the opportunity to buy it, and we sure did. Now, I also had some subscribers and traders ask me like, hey, would you trade IWM or small caps or something like that to the upside? I said, no, I've kind of learned some lessons from 2022. While I do think the market's going to move up, and I think most things will move up with the market, I think some will do better than others. And I've learned that in times like this, when things are challenging, basically stick to the mega caps. You know, that's where the money is, that's where the big players are. And even though everything is going to move, I think that they will move the most, or at least be the most reliable on those moves and the patterns. And so that is why I'm trading FNGA and other things related to that, because I just, for trying to play all these individual stocks, just not really interested in this kind of environment. Okay, then you look at the Dow, same thing, just massive, massive moves. And you can see double bottom. But it was more than just the double bottom. It was with the news and everything else. It was all lining up, and it wouldn't go lower. And I thought, that's it. This is where it's going to start turning around. And then we started getting some moves to the upside. SMH, same kind of deal. Now, I'm very curious to see how the SMH and the semiconductors actually handle next week, given that now there's some semiconductor exemptions and all that, and technology exemptions from this China tariff. So I'm wondering if they are going to maybe outperform, but they've been underperforming for a while. So again, I'm not super interested in trading them. You can trade SOXL if you want to, if you want some leveraged ETF with that, or you just trade NVIDIA with options, or anything else in that realm. So again, if they're going to move up, they're all going to move up, and that's basically what we were seeing. Okay, now let me take you over here to breadth, and here's another thing that it's like, how much lower can the market go? And you look here, the number of stocks over their 20-day SMA basically got down to zero. I think I saw 2%. And then the number of stocks that were over their 50-day SMA got down to 5%. And I'll tell you, 3, 4, 5% was the low, or the two lows, of the S&P back at the bottom of the 2022 bear market. Again, it doesn't get that much lower. Of course, there are exceptions when we have COVID, or if there's going to be some major crash or something like this. But this was kind of a tariff tantrum. The market was kind of panicking, freaking out about tariffs. And so they definitely walked it down and all that kind of stuff. And that's where we finally said, okay, this is mostly a news situation, and the market doesn't know how to price in what's going on with all these tariffs. And so if we get any kind of news, it's going to boost it back to the upside. And apparently people were starting to tap the administration or Trump and say, hey, this is getting pretty bad. You need to do something about this. And so that's where he came out and said, pause. Okay. But yeah, down to 5%, it just doesn't get that much lower. And then that tends to be where the turnaround was. And so these were the reasons to put it on. And then if we look over here, the put call ratio, we can also see up here that we have been up above 1 for numerous days. And we can see that the moving average of the put call ratio is also starting to get towards 1. So this is again another area where we should be looking at and being prepared that, hey, that's probably going to be the low, because you can see anytime that we started to get the put call ratio pretty high was the low. Some better than others, but yeah, that was about the low. Now, I don't think we're out, okay? A lot of people have been actually texting me. I got a lot of friends texting me like, can I buy the dip? And I'm still a little bit cautious about telling people who are not really into this is the dip to buy, okay? Because we have a 90-day pause. Apparently they're going to keep striking this thing up. There's still more turmoil. We haven't seen any major successes yet to actually turn the market, okay? Plus, we're trying to go through a period of austerity. They're trying to shrink the government. They're trying to shrink spending. There's still a lot of stuff happening, and still a lot of news that's going to be coming out of Washington and the White House. Okay, so while I think we have a reprieve right now, and I do think that the market's going to go higher, I cannot say at this point that the market is ready to be bullish again and to buy the dip and start going up. Okay, I was very cautious about that when we saw the 10% pullback. A lot of people, a lot of YouTubers and financial TikTokers and stuff like that were saying buy the dip, and I was saying no. I don't think this thing is done. Okay, even if we move up a little bit, I don't think this is done. And sure enough, Trump doubled down with tariffs, and the amount of tariffs and the size of the tariffs were not priced in, and that's where we saw another 10% decline in like 3 days. Okay, so right now I do think we're going to start getting a move back to the upside, but I cannot say that this is the move and that the market's done going down. Okay, so if you're looking at buying a dip, this might be a dip, but I don't think it's the dip. I think that we're still going to have some noise in the future. Okay, so then let's look at UVIX and the VIX, because this is another thing that helped demonstrate to me that the market was ready to start moving up. And if you guys look here, this is the post that I had on X. And I know it doesn't show maybe what time. You can go back and look at it, but this was April 9th. Well, you can actually just look at the chart. This was before the news came out. And I made this post and I said, hey, I'm starting to see some divergence. Notice that price went higher. Notice that the Moxie indicator was much lower. And I said, could this, with the Moxie indicator divergence, be the first little sign of a turn? We were already starting to buy the market at this point, okay? Because I started seeing these things and I thought I was like, I think this is it. So sure enough, if you look, let's see, was that the VIX? Let me get this pulled up again real quick. That was, that was the actual VIX. So let's look at the VIX. And sure enough, you can see that that was it. Here was price higher. Here was the Moxie indicator lower. And you can see later that day was where we had a huge move back to the downside. Now, I know things have been bouncing around and everything, and I know we got another move up like this. But again, I think that this is just the process of a topping pattern and how we should start seeing this come down. Okay, if you look here, the 15-minute Moxie indicator is below zero, and we're starting to trend lower on the 15-minute time frame. And I do think we're going to start breaking the hourly 50 to the downside. So I think the VIX has hit the high. I think the market has hit the low, and I think we're going to start trending in opposite directions now, which is good. It's going to be bullish for the market for this period of time, and we've already loaded up and we're doing pretty well with that. UVIX is going to be basically the same thing, and you can see in through here once again, same thing. Moxie indicator very much below zero, and I want to see price starting to fail the hourly 50 hopefully early next week. Hey, maybe with some of this news, Monday will be a good strong day. I'm still willing to have some small pullbacks in the S&P before we go higher, but generally speaking, I think that we will be higher by the end of next week, that kind of thing. All right, so FNGA, this is the leveraged ETF of the FANG stocks. And you can see I got marks out all over the place because this is a big trading vehicle for me. This was another significant clue and setup that we discussed. I was live on the mic Wednesday morning talking to the subscribers and the traders, and I said, hey, notice the double bottom, notice the positive divergence on the 15-minute time frame, and not only that, notice that how price was below the 50 but the Moxie indicator was above zero. That told me that this was going to be bullish, and I said buy the dip. I said I think this is it, and we started buying it that morning, and lo and behold the news came out, and that's where everything's set up to the upside. The other thing I want to show you is if you look at the hourly chart, this is again the divergences we're getting. Notice how price went lower. Notice how the Moxie indicator is higher, and notice how we're getting a Moxie price trigger right here on the hourly chart. Okay, I think this is go time. So that's that. As I said last week in last week's video, I'm going to be buying the FNGA. I'm going to be buying RKT. RKT didn't work out. I'll show you that. But yes, I'm getting pretty heavy in FNGA. All right. Yes, there was a Moxie price trigger here, but again, that was just kind of the first move. I wanted to see if we wanted to go up here, and it was very much based on news. Okay, we sold our positions up here, and then we let this thing pull back, and then the tariff news and everything else like that came out, and now we've got even bigger divergence. So I'm still going to hold this as a potential target. I don't know if we're going to get to maybe 450 or maybe 475. Basically kind of anywhere here I think we're going to hit if we actually have a pretty legit move to the upside. And if you look at FNGA, Like let's say what's involved here. We got in here. We are already up 22%. We were up a max of like 30, I think it was 39% or 35% that FNGA moved that one day. If we come up to where I think we're going to go, we could be upwards of 70, 75, 70 to 75%, I think is how big this move in FNGA could be. At least, I've got a target. We'll see if we actually hit it. If you guys got in from, let's say, Friday-ish, there's still potentially 40%. Okay, so there's still a lot of upside move in through here if this thing continues to work out, but this is what we're doing, and that's how we're taking it. So let me show you then, let me show you RKT, and then we can talk about TLT. So I do think that this name overall will or would have been strong because you can see it was definitely doing pretty well even when the market was starting to come down. It also handled the buyouts of the other companies, the mergers that it did. And usually the company that does the buying goes down. That's why you see these two big dips, because that's when they announce the buyout of the companies. But then they both rebounded very strongly, which again is a little bit rare. And this thing was looking great when the market was going down. And I would think that this thing was going to hold support and then start to move up if everything with the bonds had actually stayed on track. So now let's show you TLT, because you'll see how this is moving. RKT should be basically moving with the bonds because they want interest rates to come down. And you see how RKT in through this area was doing pretty well? Yeah, that's because the bonds were going up. But because of the tariff stuff, because maybe the China retaliation, whatever the reasons are, bonds got absolutely smashed. And I think that RKT and the bonds are going to be correlated. So that is the reason that that trade did not work. We got stopped out. I don't know, was Thursday or something like that, or maybe Friday or something. I don't know. One of these days last week, we got stopped out at $13. And we move on. But I think the reason was from this. Now it'll be interesting. I know there's a lot of news about bonds and all that kind of stuff, but it's going to be really interesting to see if these technicals also line up, because right here with TLT, I'm seeing a double bottom. So that's one thing to pay attention to. I'm also seeing a potential trampoline move. Price below the 50, the Moxie indicator above 0. So this will just be something to watch over the next few days and see if this actually holds its lows and if it can start to recover. If it can, then I think that there could be a second opportunity for RKT, because you can see RKT is looking a lot like the bond, like TLT, isn't it? You have price below the 50, the Moxie indicator above 0. Not quite a double bottom, but maybe kind of retesting. This is kind of a big area, retesting a low area. And so we should see if this starts to come back up. Okay, so I'm going to be watching this. I don't know if I'll take another trade with it. We'll have to see what the setup looks like. But if you guys are tracking this, I wanted to show you that. All right, now let's look at Tesla and TSLL. Also, let me just show you this. This was the FNGA trade. So just want to show you guys like, hey, yeah, this is where I think things are going to go and that we're going to be buying it. And you can see here my target on S&P was 5,400, and we certainly got it. So yeah, we started to load up on these things, and you can see the trade or the alert that I put out here again before the Trump news. And I said, we already put on a bullish trade this morning with the S&P. I'm looking for more trades. I did have to leave later that day for a trip, but I said, hey, if you want to buy FNGA or TSLL or basically anything else related to the market, if I'm right about this, they're all going to go up because they're all market related, and I think we're going to go. So I started to load up on these things. And then if I open up this one, you can see here, as I said, I had already started buying FNGA, but then when the news hit, I was like, oh, I think this is going to be, I think this is legit news. I decided to throw some more stuff on, and so we quickly bought TSLO once I saw what was happening. And we bought it at $8.16. And you can see, I think it's up at like 8.4 right now. We'll go to TSL in a second, but Tesla, if you look at this, it's actually got some pretty good relative strength. I look at this and say, wow, that just made a double bottom, even though the market made a lower low. So should be some relative strength. We also see the Moxie price trigger firing again. And so we basically bought here. And then I think anywhere in here you could probably continue to add, because I do think we're going to start moving back up. And I think we're going to move up. I feel like $300 is a pretty conservative target. Maybe it can go higher. I mean, if this gets really crazy, maybe we can go up to, what is that, like 340, 330, 340. The other gamble is that we do have earnings coming up. who knows what's going to happen with earnings, okay? Earnings are always a big unknown, it's a guess. And so, largely, most of the time, I am out for earnings, but this, I don't know, maybe I'll keep a little bit on, maybe we can do an option strategy. Just understand anything can happen for earnings, but for the most part, I'm looking for 300, maybe even a little over 300 if this market is really actually pretty strong. And if we look at TSLL in through here, you can see 8.16 right here is where we bought it. It's up 8.4. You know, where we bought it 8.16, it did go up 21%, like even 21% that day from where we bought it. It's since pulled back. I am adding to it, and I think this is looking pretty good. And interestingly enough, not only with the double bottom here, but we have a trampoline move here on the hourly. So price below the 50, the Moxie indicator above 0. Now, I know it's a leverage ETF, so that doesn't always correlate, but it is something to note, and I am viewing that as bullish. All right, and then some of the other names, as you guys saw from the list, that I'm willing to get into. Now remember, for the most part, I am not going to be interested in trading a bunch of names during this, okay? I think the market is still challenging. I think it still has some negative pressure to it. I think we still have a lot of news that's out there, and I would imagine that the appetite for big traders and investors is pretty much not there. I think that, yes, they see opportunities, and yes, we have traders, but for investing, I don't think this is quite the right environment. And so I'm going to stick with a few select names. Now, I've chosen OKLO because it is sitting here at some major support levels, okay? There's a big price level here you can see from the weekly. It's sitting on the weekly 50. It's sitting on the monthly 10. It's got a lot of reasons for that. I'm also seeing with the Moxie indicator, price down, Moxie indicator up. We've got divergence. We've got the Moxie price trigger. We have price sitting on the hourly 50. And if this market decides to pop, I think we could pop up to the daily 50, and that's a pretty good size. Let's just say from right here to, anything around here. I mean, 48%. Gosh, I mean, even if we got 40%, that would be amazing. But if we can get like 48%, that's going to be incredible. So I do think that's part of the reason why I did it, because I think it's a big mover, and I think that this is setting up nicely as far as a base and a turnaround. So OKLO. And then I'm not trading this one, but I wanted to show you guys that there are some other names of interest out there. SMMT, I have never traded this one, but I'm aware of it. And look at the move that it had. It took off and hasn't even pulled back. So I can't say that I want to buy it up here. It's right at the top of its range. So yeah, I don't really want to buy it right there. But the fact that this thing looks pretty strong, if you can find a pullback to get into it, maybe you want to do something about it. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And then MSTR is kind of a proxy for Bitcoin, because if this market's going to be going up right now, then I'm kind of leaning towards there could be some bullishness in Bitcoin, but I don't know for how long. Okay, that's the thing. I don't know how far, and I don't know for how long. But if you look at MSTR and you look at Bitcoin, they are back down to monthly moving average supports. Same thing here on the weekly. They are finding some support, and if we come down here, MSTR is actually doing a pretty good job of holding this level. The market's been falling off a cliff and making new lows. And yes, there have been some down moves for MSTR, but at this point, it's starting to hold these levels. So I could see there being a move. Just maybe watch out for this trend line, because maybe it comes up to here, maybe it comes up to here. But then we have to be careful, because I do think that the market's going to continue to be weak. So right now, we're really just trading a bounce. And we could be a bounce into something else that kind of weakens. So you really need to kind of keep cutting this up into pieces, because I can't foresee far enough out there to say, oh yeah, this market's doing fine, 90-day pause, let's buy and let's just hold, buy and hold. Yeah, I don't know about that. This is still a trader's market, and that's how I'm going to be viewing it. Okay, guys? So thanks again for your time. I hope you're enjoying it. And remember, if you're interested for the class, we're doing great with this stuff. I don't know why that is doing what it's doing. Let's try that. There we go. One more time. And so come on over, simplertrading.com/Moxie method. We'll have the link in the bio and everything in the description. And remember, this is going to be the last one that we're going to be doing for a while. So I want to make sure you guys get into this. Okay? So we'll see you there. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you Monday. Take care.